Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Shields versus Perkins fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So this is Claressa Shields yet again, having now her second fight in the heavyweight division, and I don't believe any kind of extra belts are coming from Perkins in this fight, but it's her kind of taking on a challenger and accepting that the next test and another undefeated fighter in which she can try and put her tests up against, and another fighter in Perkins who, like herself, is an excellent amateur fighter and has been progressing very successfully so far in the professional rankings. But to give an initial kind of overview of the fight, so Shields is 15-0 with 3 KOs, and Perkins is 5-0 with 2 KOs. This fight is for the vacant IBF, WBC, WBF, and vacant WBO World Heavyweight titles. Shields' last fight was a win via TKO in round 2 versus Lepage Joannis, and Perkins' last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Fahey. Shields is 29 and Perkins is 42. Perkins is a southpaw, and to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, there are various different belts on the line for this. To be honest, I'm not too sure. The WBA might be on the line as well, but it's quite hard to kind of find this information. But from what I know, they're the confirmed belts on the line. Like I mentioned, there's two vacant ones, which I suppose they've just haven't been recognised in the past too much because of the heavyweight division on the women's side of things being so slim, and now having such a huge name in Claressa Shields in the heavyweight division. Of course, in general, she's bringing the eyes to the division, but she's also seemingly giving or getting recognition from mandatory bodies as well, which is just such a huge thing. And to be fair, it is great for women's boxing that this is happening, because you've got to think that this will progress on the women's heavyweight division even more. And I'm not too sure how big of a belt the WBF World One is. It's definitely one that's not kind of given to men's fighters, but it's mentioned in this one, and it's been mentioned in a few women's fights in which I've seen. So, like I mentioned, I thought I would say it. Obviously, Shields' last performance was an excellent knockout victory versus Lepage Joannis, where she showed that she could go up to heavyweight with pretty much ease, to be completely honest, and was very successful with doing that. And in general, the speed in which she has been going through titles has been crazy. I mean, the fact that she is 15-0, and to be honest, only 29 years of age. It's another crazy thing to kind of say how much she has been able to achieve in her career, not just professionally, amateur wise as well. Like I mentioned, the amount in which she's had been able to achieve two Olympic gold medals. You have to wait, of course, 4 years in between each one to even get to that. So, yeah, like I mentioned, for the age in which she's at, the amount in which she's been able to achieve has been quite spectacular, to be completely honest. And she definitely has been uh, entrepreneur, I suppose, and also an inspiration for those in the higher weight divisions in women's boxing, because she's progressed through a lot of weight divisions and has fought some great fights and been able to get some great wins along the way. But what she's doing now, like I mentioned, is definitely going to be inspiring a generation of female heavyweights, because they haven't really ever had somebody to look to in that aspect. Of course, you've had the likes of Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, just to name a couple amazing names, but there's so many great names in the lower weight divisions for women's boxing. But to now have one in the heavyweight division, like I say, can definitely inspire that new generation of women's fighters coming through. And in general, you kind of got to think that that would be a necessary thing, because other than Claressa Shields, you look around of who's actually around in the women's heavyweight division rankings, a lot of them are on the older side. I mean, of course, we have Perkins here, who is 5-0 and was a very successful amateur, but she's 42 years of age. Of course, that's not to discredit what she could achieve and what she can go on to do in her career, but you also got to think at the same time, if she would have started younger and perhaps had them inspirations and that push and that drive to start earlier, then she could have, like I mentioned, gone on to achieve more things professionally. But she might get cut short of that because of her age to an extent. But of course, this is a huge matchup for herself, and it's going to be interesting to see how she is able to fare with that of Shields. Of course, she's also with Solita Promotions and was on the undercard of Shields versus Lepage Joannis, and so has been able to definitely watch what Shields has been doing and acknowledge her and study her at a very kind of close up fashion. And so I'm sure she was very quick to say yes to this fight. And in general, you also look at what Claressa Shields is doing, like I mentioned, with Solita Promotions. It's not a big promotion, and Solita Promotions puts on some good shows. They have some good fighters, but they're nowhere near a huge promotion. But Claressa Shields in these fights, which haven't been against the biggest of names, Lepage Joannis hasn't been a huge name. Cornejo was another one, not a huge name. Perkins as well, not a huge name. She's been able to fill out arenas and really sell and get millions of views on these fights. And so, it's spectacular to see how well she is able to sell herself, and the fact that she is pretty much the face of Solita Promotions is, again, like I mentioned, just a crazy thing to see, to be completely honest. I mean, we might have Deontay Wilder coming on to a Solita Promotions fight card soon, but other than that, you've got to think she is by far the one who's bringing the most amount of eyes to the promotion, and yeah, really selling out a lot of things. And in general, it's something in which I would be interested in would be how well her film has sold, because she put out, I don't know how many people actually know this, but she put out kind of a biography type film on Christmas Day, I believe. And so like I mentioned, she sells really well in arenas. She gets millions of views. She's had a record in which, like I say, has been progressing very quickly. She's become multi-weight world champion with ease, and like I say, has been progressing very well. And in football terms, she's been stat padding, to be completely honest, just picking up belts pretty much left, right, and centre wherever she can. And so, yeah, like I say, in general, it would just be interesting to see how well her film's done, and if she's really kind of had the success worth making a film. A lot of professional fighters who have made biographies or films about themselves, they've been after their careers happened, and the same with loads of athletes. But to have one when you're still young, I mean 29 years of age, and still can go on to achieve so much, perhaps that opens up for a sequel if this one does well. But perhaps at the same time, it may have been a bit too soon to be moving on to making a film and things like that. But for Shield, you always kind of got to see that she is definitely very confident in herself. Maybe got that ego, which is a bit too much, and I feel like that has been showing a little bit in recent times. And I'm just, like I say, she sells really well, but at the same time, her online fan base, I suppose, or the fan base outside of that, big fan base that she's able to sell arenas with, are they kind of turning against her a little bit? Are they not too keen on her as a fighter, because she has got a loud personality, and she's got a big kind of personality, and she admitted that herself, that she's not going to ever kind of back down or shy away from saying what she believes, and whatever, you know if somebody's going to call her out, she's going to really kind of react to it and things like that. And she's just, like I say, very passionate about what she's saying, and perhaps to an extent, like I say, I feel like people maybe not always too keen on that, and it's perhaps a little bit annoying to certain people. But yeah, that would just be interesting to see. I suppose at the same time, her doing that maybe is bringing more eyes to what she's doing, because people want to see her, similar to that of like a Ben Whittaker at the moment. People want to see her not succeed, and she has been silencing any kind of haters at the moment. So she's backing up whatever she is saying, and so you got to give her credit for that. And in general, again, that's another reason how she sells herself so well. But one of the debates in which has kind of sparked a bit of controversy, I suppose, with what she's been saying, is the sparring between herself and male fighters. There was a clip which a little bit ago came out of her getting dropped by a male fighter while sparring. She has always said that she wants to spar male fighters and that she wants to probably at some point have a fight with a male fighter. I think it was linked that Keith Thurman was willing to do it at one point, but I doubt that ever will happen. But will it ever happen? That is another question. Could it ever happen? In Misfits, perhaps it could happen. In professional boxing, you've got to think that it probably won't happen. You know, we have the whole thing with Iman Khalif, who was that female Algerian fighter who won gold in the Olympics and had the whole controversies around her with her, you know, having the testosterone levels and everything like that. But could we ever actually see just a female fighter going in and fighting a professional fighter? I'm not too sure. I mean, sparring, I know that does happen between female and male fighters quite a lot, but it can, you know, cause problems, and there is a kind of physicality thing about it which can cause issues, and it's a huge debate, and Claressa Shields has definitely had her say on it, and there's definitely come with the controversial takes in which she's given, saying, you know, how confident she is. Like I mentioned, she's confident against everybody, but how confident she is to be able to go in and fight a male fighter and be able to win and, you know, be stronger and more physical. But you know, if you got to wait up, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose, if that ever is to happen. But I just don't think somebody like Claressa Shields would ever actually fight a man in a heavyweight fight. You know, another one of the heavyweights. It would be an interesting contest, I suppose, but I just don't ever see it happening. And another thing in which I'm not sure if it will ever happen again for Claressa Shields, her fighting in the PFL. She obviously went to the PFL, then Savannah Marshall shortly followed, and this was after their fight. And so it was interesting to see that she was wanting to go into kind of wrestling and everything like that. And she's had multiple backs and forth with a fighter such as Chris Cyborg. She's gone back and forth with her quite a lot, and it's been, you know, perhaps rumoured that she could have had an MMA fight versus somebody like Chris Cyborg. She's gone out and said that she will not do that. She is not able to give enough time and enough energy to be able to learn all the crafts that go with MMA and everything like that. And I respect her for saying that, because it is a very, very difficult thing. And if you can't give it that amount of time, then, you know, it's risky to go and do it. And you've seen boxers struggle doing it in the past. But does that mean, you know, perhaps you may never fight in the PFL again? Perhaps it was such a money move to even sign with them. When the PFL first came in, of course, well, first came to the kind of big scene, of course, they had a lot of money and were really splashing that and signed people like Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou, Claressa Shields, Savannah Marshall, you know, just to name a few. And they've definitely taken a toll on the budget of their events, what they can do. You've just recently seen the PFL drop to a 500,000 prize pool for their Grand Prix tournaments, which is still a great amount of money, but going from a million to 500, that's a half budget cut. And so is having something like a Claressa Shields, first of all, is she even still signed with the PFL? Is she getting any money from them? How much money did she get from them in the first place? And, you know, how much money did she actually give back to the PFL from the fight in which she had? You know, it wasn't against a big opponent. I think it got like a million plus views on YouTube, which was good. But like I say, how much money did it actually give back? Was it worth the investment? And there was talks of her fighting, rematching Savannah Marshall in MMA. Again, like I say, it's just another thing in which I'm not sure if she will ever go and fight in the PFL again. It was nice to see. It shows that she can fight in MMA to an extent, and she does have that kind of mixed variety of skills in her arsenal. But yeah, at the same time, it's just, will we ever see it again? Probably not, to be completely honest. And it wouldn't surprise me if we never see her in the PFL again, even though she has been, you know, still willing to invite fighters like Chris Cyborg to fight her in boxing. And you know, like I mentioned about the heavyweight division, going back to it for boxing, it's getting in a good position now, and Claressa Shields is definitely bringing fighters to it. It seems like Savannah Marshall, again, I keep referencing her name, but just she was such a huge draw. And I mean, to be fair, we're just seeing coming up a second all women's card, which is, you know, the first one did so amazingly well, and that's thanks to Marshall versus Shields, the rivalry in which that was. I don't know if this one's going to sell quite as well because, you know, two amazing fighters in Jones and Price, but not got that kind of rivalry, not got that spite, that bitterness, that entertainment to be able to really bring over as many fans, I believe, in my opinion. But of course, she started that, Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall, with just that amazing fight. That was their first fight, and so like I said, she's bringing fighters up. Savannah Marshall has said that she's willing to move up. Claressa Shields says if she is willing to move up, she will rematch her again. We'll happily rematch her again, and I'm sure money wise that would make more than enough sense. But you also got to look at, can divisions start kind of forming as a result of Claressa Shields bringing new names to it? The cruiserweight division, just for one, is pretty much got no fighters in. I don't think it's got any world titles given to it, and so there's definitely a market there to have a world title. It's such a great division in the men's side of things with some great champions. The women's side of things, like I mentioned, Claressa Shields could definitely bring titles up into it, and to create it as an actual division, which would be such a huge feat for her to do. And I feel like that could be something which is beyond just winning titles. Her being able to create divisions would be just such a massive thing. And it was interesting to see how her last fight versus Lepage Joannis was for multiple weight belts. I don't really know how that worked, but because of how slim the light heavyweight division is, they kind of seemingly just put light heavyweight division titles and world titles on the same kind of card, and so Shields kind of won some of them at the same time. But even though for this fight it's all just heavyweight titles, and yeah, I suppose to actually speak about them both individually as fighters and touch more upon Perkins as well, because I feel like I haven't really said too much about her for the moment. So we'll start with Perkins. And Perkins, she as a fighter will put her all into her shots. She's shown that, and is thudding with her blows in which she will land. She's definitely a big fighter, a much bigger fighter than that of Lepage Joannis. And so yeah, she will definitely come with big thudding shots. And in general, when you look at the light heavyweight champions, Blaney Daniels isn't really a massive fighter, and so Perkins is seemingly kind of made a bit more for the heavyweight division. And Shields had such a longer reach compared to that of Lepage Joannis, even though she didn't really use it too much. She has lesser of a reach than that of Perkins. It's nothing crazy, but it's still, like I say, Perkins is showing that she is more what made for this size, for this division. So it's going to be an interesting test in that way. She's definitely imposing with her size at the same time as well, Perkins, and is physical, and it will push you off if you get too close. She controls the pace typically quite well. She will, have her moments in which she'll be kind of slowing things down a little bit, but when she wants to come into a round and set quite a high tempo, she will try and do that. Obviously, her cardio and her stamina isn't anywhere near the levels of that of Claressa Shields, but for the most part, she is able to control the pace, or is used to controlling the pace. Has she dealt with somebody like Claressa Shields? No, but she wants to control the pace. She waits for her moments very well. She is typically a mid-range type fighter. She makes her opponents wary of her. I think, like I say, going back to the size thing, I feel like she definitely does make opponents wary, because they are just maybe a bit threatened to an extent by the size of Perkins, and the fact that she also will stand up quite tall and, like I say, impose herself so physically. She is going to make her opponents wary of her, and Shields definitely hasn't really dealt with that before. She's fought against taller opponents, but hasn't fought against somebody, I suppose, as imposing or as big of a figure than that of Perkins. She walks you down. She's got solid timing, respectable levels of timing. She's quite composed, relaxed. You would argue probably a bit too relaxed in that last performance versus Fahey. She was very relaxed and probably a bit too much, but it shows that a lot of her work comes quite naturally to her. She doesn't respect opponents, and that's something in which she's not going to be respecting. Claressa Shields, I feel like Lepage Joannis kind of accepted bad positions because she was really wary of that of Shields, but I don't feel like somebody like Perkins will be. She will just keep trying to walk you down and come through any kind of shots, and she finds her range quite well, which is, I suppose, something in which maybe she does a little bit better than that of Shields. Negatives about her, I think she can jump in with a lack of control. She tries to be a bit explosive at times, but she does have a lot of lack of control when she is kind of rushing in with shots. She is the slower out of the two by far. She is the less accurate. I mean, I don't think Shields is overly that accurate, but she's much less accurate than that of Shields. She stands tall. Like I mentioned, a very big target to be hit. She has a low guard at the same time and very poor defensive movements. And there has been times where, especially in that last fight, where the only times in which Fahey was having success was because Perkins was just happily sitting on the ropes and had her guard low, was just way too relaxed to try to just jab away out a little bit with the singular shots in which she continuously throws, not really able to do much with combinations, and that's where she was getting caught with shots. And if Shields has her up against the ropes, I mean, you've just seen what's happened with Lepage Joannis when she was waiting up against the ropes. She will get caught and she will get hurt. She will get punished more than that Fahey was able to do. She waits for her opponents to throw sometimes, and she walks through shots. Like I say, she's able to walk you down and walk through shots, but she is also taking punishment whilst doing that. And she struggles against movers and kind of a fast paced fighters who can, like I say, move well but also have fast hands, which to an extent is that of Claressa Shields. She has very poor footwork for combinations. When she throws a combination, she looks very unsure of what to do. When she throws a singular shot, at least her footwork looks a bit more, stable and sturdy than that of when she goes for combinations. She throws from very low down, and she isn't really able to keep you at a jab, even though her jab is quite thudding and quite strong. She can just leave it out there and you can just get past it quite easily. And, again, that's another thing in which she does do negatively, in my opinion. To speak about Claressa Shields as a fighter, of course, she's very aggressive. I feel like she is explosive, definitely, as well. And I feel like them two mixed together, with the fact that she's also always very fired up, she's going to be able to, I think, if she can get Perkins onto the back foot, she's going to be able to really explode with shots and use her fast hands, which are very, very fast, to have a lot of success. She has definitely a higher output than that of Perkins and is the opposite offensive wise, to be honest. She's going to be throwing a lot of combinations and going to be really letting her hands go with better success than that of Perkins. She plants her feet well. She's hard to get off, and Perkins is much more of a mid-range type fighter, like I've touched upon. So for somebody like Shields, if she is able to get in close, then she's probably going to make Perkins feel very uncomfortable. She has continuous combinations, like I say, and just non-stop kind of headshot, thud hooks. She punches, pushes her shots through a lot of the time, and has a lot of success when she's doing that. She can fight on the front or the back foot. She doesn't smother her work either. A lot of fighters with a similar type of style to that of Shields wanting to be in close and really foot in quick, continuous combinations are gonna smother their work a lot more. And Perkins may try and lean on her and impose her. That might be where she has a bit of success, but for the most part, Shields won't smother her work. Her gas tank is much better than that of Perkins. She typically fights best in close, in my opinion, and I think she doesn't always have the best of head movement when she's offensively going forwards, but when she is on the rope, she definitely has much better head movement than that of Perkins. So she's going to be able to probably see the singular shots coming from Perkins because, like I say, her speed is much slower. So she's probably going to be able to slip the shots like she did to Lepage Joannis and then have success trying to counter or respond from there. She often gets the better of exchanges, and she can typically deal with physicality quite well because she will try and match that energy, match that, through her aggressive nature, match that style. But yeah, like I say, able to deal with that physicality and that imposingness of that of Perkins. Negatives about her, I think she will go back in a straight line quite a lot. So perhaps if Perkins comes on early with her explosive, messy attacks, she might be able to land one or two. She has quite wide hooks and she doesn't really find her range the best with the jab. So if Perkins is able to use her jab and actually be able to keep you at a range, then she could definitely have much more success. She doesn't utilize her reach very well, and like I say, she's not going to have a reach advantage for this fight, so you don't really have to think too much about that. But she just didn't really seem to do it that much versus Lepage Joannis, like I mentioned. She allows war type exchanges. Like I say, for the most part, she's going to get the better of that. And against Perkins, Perkins isn't really going to shorten up her shots enough and isn't probably going to be able to throw enough to be in them war type exchanges. So you'd like to think that Shields will just get the success out of them. She fights quite emotionally, so if it does go into the later rounds and she's not been able to hurt Perkins, then that definitely could frustrate her. So we could possibly see that happen there. She can overreach at a mid-range. She can swing without control a little bit at times, like I say, with the wide hooks. She can leave herself quite open and square up in front of you when she is throwing her combinations, and Perkins might be able to land a footing shot as a result of that. She doesn't always go for counters nice as much as what I feel like she should do with the speed in which she has. Her accuracy isn't always amazing, and she does often, or quite often, headhunt for the most part as well, possibly a bit more so than that of Perkins. Shields is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Shields will win via TKO in round 4. To be honest, I doubt that we'll see her stop Perkins, because Perkins is going to be able to take a shot most likely, and I don't know if Shields' power is going to be enough to really kind of damage Perkins, but I could just see her corner coming in, stepping in, and just ending it, because Shields, or the ref getting involved, because if Perkins sits on the ropes, Shields will just continuously onslaught combinations non-stop with her fast hands, and I definitely will believe that it will overwhelm Perkins and be way too much for her to be able to deal with the skill level in which she has, and that's where I believe Shields is going to have a lot of success. Similarly, again to that of in the fight versus Lepaggio, and even if Shields is put onto the back foot, then I think she'll be able to use her head movement and her speed to be able to see, like I mentioned, the singular shots coming from that of Perkins, and then be able to respond back with success with the shots in which she'll land. So yeah, like I say, I feel like Shields is going to win comfortably via stoppage in round 4, and it'll be an excellent stoppage victory for Claressa Shields, to be honest, because she's always seemingly had that power there and that physicality there, but she's just never really seemingly, I suppose, been able to use it as well as what she wants to, and to be able to get the stoppages as a result of it. And so if she could get back-to-back stoppages in the heavyweight division, that shows that this division probably is for her. Maybe it's the level of opposition, but still it shows that she is definitely powerful and gone up physically with a lot of ease, which is great to see. And so yeah, I feel like I mentioned, it will be another stoppage victory then, who she could go on to fight. Of course, if you go into the light heavyweight division, there's Daniels, IBF champion, and Ken Neely, WBA champion, two Oceania type fighters. They've kind of both mentioned their name. Laney Daniels has very clearly mentioned the name Claressa Shields, so that could be two easy fights to make, because neither of them have kind of huge promotions. So that, like I mentioned, could be great fights to make. Or, of course, like I've been talking about, Savannah Marshall may move up and kind of fight her. There has been kind of a lot of interviews in which Savannah Marshall's done talking about Claressa Shields, but it's one of them things where there's talking about it and there's actually fighting her, and there's been no real agreements as of yet for her to seemingly actually rematch her. But there's also no agreements for for Marshall to go and fight anybody else, to be completely honest. So we're kind of just waiting around to see what might happen with Marshall's career. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, need like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.